Yes. Okay. Hello everyone. Selamat pagi. Semangat pagi di hari Kamis yang cerah ini. I'm so excited right now. Kenapa? Luar biasa sekali pada pagi hari ini saya bisa bertemu dengan teman-teman di Superclass. Dan saya juga melihat gitu di Superclass hari ini bukan hanya dari kalangan mahasiswa saja, tapi ada juga dari profesional. Well, thank you for join us. Dan perkenalkan saya Dedi, host untuk hari ini di Superclass. First of all, saya akan undang penggagas dan penyelenggara dari Superclass hari ini. Langsung saja saya akan undang dari ID Nation, Bapak Muhammad Kadafi Safi'i selaku Kepala Program dari ID Nation untuk menyapa semua teman-teman Superclass hari ini. Ada Mas Dafi.
Selamat pagi, Dedi.
Oke, Mas Dafi silakan menyapa dulu nih teman-teman dari Superclass hari ini, Mas Dafi.
Oke, terima kasih, Dedi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi menjelang siang. Perkenalkan, nama saya Kadafi. Di sini mewakili ID Nation. Saya ingin mengucapkan selamat datang di acara Superclass ID Nation. Terima kasih kepada seluruh peserta acara yang sudah meluangkan waktunya nih untuk mengikuti acara ini. Jadi acara ini memang kita buat khusus bagi teman-teman yang memiliki ketertarikan pada bidang visual effect. Dan saya rasa ini tidak setiap hari kita bisa mendapatkan kesempatan untuk mendengarkan penuturan-penuturan nih dari para master dalam bidang visual effect ini. Tidak hanya itu, kita juga akan mendapat kesempatan untuk berinteraksi dengan mereka secara langsung melalui aplikasi Zoom ini. Nah, mungkin di sini teman-teman masih ada yang belum familiar dengan Ideation. Nah, jadi saya jelaskan sedikit, Ideation itu sendiri itu adalah suatu platform inovasi yang tujuannya adalah untuk memberikan kesempatan nih bagi inovator-inovator maupun anak-anak muda kreatif di Indonesia untuk berani menunjukkan ide-ide mereka dan juga karya-karya yang mereka buat. Nah, Ideation di sini akan mendorong mereka dengan cara kita membuat kompetisi-kompetisi baik dalam bidang inovasi dan juga tentunya di bidang kreatif. Nah, untuk selanjutnya kita akan membantu mereka mengubah ide-ide yang mereka punya itu menjadi karya nyata atau produk-produk yang kita bisa komersialkan melalui program inkubasi kita. Nah, melalui tahapan-tahapan ini kita harapkan nanti akan timbul startup-startup baru terutama dalam bidang teknologi, inovasi, dan juga industri kreatif. Nah, salah satu acara yang kita buat untuk mendukung tujuan kita itu adalah Superclass. Jadi di mana kita akan mengundang pakar-pakar di bidangnya untuk memberikan kita insight atas industri yang digelutinya. Nah, hari ini sudah hadir Mas Ryan Laksamana, founder dari Imagia Studio, yang sudah terlibat nih dalam film-film seperti Ksatria Bima, Bumi Manusia, dan juga proyek-proyek dari Jepang seperti Machida Kuno Sekai dan juga Grand Blue. Ada juga Mas Chrisley, founder dari Caravan Studio yang membuat film-film skala nasional seperti Wiro Sableng, Gundala, dan juga terlibat dalam film-film internasional seperti Old Guard. Nah, dan juga I would also want to welcome our expert from the US, Mr. Kevin Van Hook, a master in the visual effect industry with involvement in blockbuster movies such as Bloodshot, iRobot, Olympus Has Fallen, and of course the newly Netflix release Project Power. I hope that this webinar will provide positive insight and will also inspire us to create amazing work in the special effect field in Indonesia. Once more, thank you for attending this webinar and please enjoy Superclass. Terima kasih, kembali ke Dedi.
Oke, thank you Mas Dafi sudah menyapa teman-teman yang hadir di Superclass hari ini. Lanjut, saya akan panggil Dewi, salah satu perwakilan dari ID Nation juga untuk bergabung dengan kita. Saya akan ngobrol-ngobrol sedikit nih bareng Dewi mengenai kompetisi Idea Challenge Series Technology Best Art. Dewi, halo.
Halo, Dedi.
Ya, Dew, kita ngobrol short aja mengenai kompetisi Idea Challenge Series Technology Best Art nih, Dew. Jadi sedikit dong jelaskan mengenai kompetisi ini dan sebenarnya proyeknya apa aja sih di kompetisi ini. Silakan Dew.
Oke, jadi di Idea Challenge seri kedua ini kita mengangkat topik CGI. Jadi kita berkolaborasi dengan para profesional di bidangnya. Kita berkolaborasi dengan Mas Ryan and team untuk men-challenge teman-teman untuk bisa mensubmit karyanya, karya CGI di platform Idea Challenge Series 2 ini. Jadi untuk Idea Challenge Series 2 ini kita memiliki dua kategori. Kategori pertama itu adalah kategori beginner dan kategori kedua itu adalah kategori yang profesional, Deb. Nah, jadi bedanya apa yang kategori beginner sama yang profesional? Kalau yang kategori beginner memang sebenarnya kita tujukan untuk mereka sebenarnya publik, jadi bisa aja mahasiswa ataupun siapapun yang mempunyai ketertarikan terhadap CGI, namun masih belum memiliki banyak experience dan exposure di bidang ini. Nah, yang kedua itu adalah untuk kategori profesional. Yang profesional ini memang sebenarnya kita tujukan untuk mereka yang memang sudah memiliki exposure dan experience di terlibat di dalam proyek-proyek. Nah, jadi ini ada dua kategori yang berbeda. Jadi nggak perlu berkecil hati bagi misalnya teman-teman yang saya masih belum punya experience nih. Saya bagaimana bisa bersaing dengan yang profesional? Jadi bisa submit lewat yang channel yang beginner nih. Sementara untuk yang profesional bisa lewat yang channel profesional. Nah, bedanya lagi di materinya sih, materi yang akan kita challenge. Kalau untuk kategori beginner, kita akan memberikan footage atau raw file berupa still image. Nah, nanti untuk submission-nya sendiri, itu hasil karya akhirnya juga dalam bentuk still image, ya. Nah, sementara untuk yang profesional, nanti untuk raw file-nya nanti akan kita provide dalam bentuk video, yang nanti bisa dipilih oleh oleh peserta, dan kemudian hasil akhir yang kita expect itu juga dalam bentuk video. Nah, untuk detailnya nanti bisa dicek di website-nya kita. Jadi ada list complete requirement-nya itu apa, ya. Jadi begitu deh.
Oke. Deus, sedikit aja, kapan nih deadline-nya terakhir submission untuk kompetisi ini? ICS 2.
Submission-nya masih sampai tanggal 5 Oktober, jadi masih cukup lama ya. Sekarang kan baru tanggal 27 ya, jadi masih ada sebulan lebih lagi. Cukup lama waktunya, sampai 5 Oktober.
Oke, dan mungkin nih harus disebutin nih hadiahnya tuh sebenarnya apa Dew dari ikut kompetisi Idea Challenge Series Technology Best Art ini?
Oke, yang pasti nanti kita akan menyediakan cash reward. Jadi ada hadiah uang tunai baik untuk kategori beginner maupun profesional. Dan ada lagi nih yang menarik, Dad. Jadi di ICS ini bedanya kita dengan kompetisi yang lain, selain dapat cash reward, pemenang juga akan mendapatkan kesempatan untuk mendapatkan internship opportunity untuk kategori beginner dan job opportunity untuk kategori profesional. Nah, jadi si peserta-peserta ini nggak hanya mendapatkan cash reward selesai, tapi nanti akan mendapatkan kesempatan nih untuk terjun ke industri ini dan berkolaborasi dengan memang pakar-pakar yang sudah ahli di industri ini, ya.
Oke, good opportunity ya ternyata.
Nah, untuk link registration-nya dan untuk tahu lebih lanjut tentang ICS ini, nanti teman-teman bisa cek di website kita di www.ideanation.id atau cek di follow Instagram kita di @im.ideanation. Jadi untuk link registrasi juga tadi saya udah sempat share di kolom chat. Jadi bisa banget sambil dicek ya di kolom chat. Jadi untuk yang mau berpartisipasi bisa, kita welcome banget.
Oke, well, thank you Dewi untuk penjelasan sedikit mengenai kompetisi Idea Challenge Series Technology Best Art ya. Nah, untuk teman-teman di Superclass, kompetisi ini tuh terbuka untuk umum. Jadi siapa saja yang pengen banget ikutan, silahkan submit karya kalian di ideanation.id seperti yang tadi kata Dewi bilang ya. Well, selanjutnya kita undang dua super ganteng, dua super talenta. Ada Ryan Laksamana dan Chris Lee. Mereka akan menjadi moderator kita di Superclass bersama dengan Kevin Panhook hari ini. Halo Mas Ryan, Mas Chris.
Halo semuanya.
Halo.
Oke, Mas Ryan, Mas Chris, nih saya serahkan hari ini nih untuk Mas Ryan dan Mas Chris membawakan di talk nih dengan nanti Kevin Panhook ya Mas.
Ya, siap.
Oke deh, langsung ya Mas ya. Silakan Mas.
Ya, selamat pagi menjelang siang semuanya. Selamat datang di Adination Superclass. Kita di sini bertujuan untuk mempertemukan gitu talenta-talenta muda Indonesia dan seluruh kreator dan pelaku industri kreatif Indonesia dengan the rest of the world, dengan dunia gitu. Nah, ini adalah sebetulnya workshop pertama dari sekian banyak workshop nanti di masa depan juga gitu, di mana nanti kita bisa sharing knowledge, sharing pengalaman juga gitu kan, dan kemudian bisa bernetworking dan kelak juga bisa meniti karir dalam bidang kreatif nasional dan internasional di dalam platform ini. Gitu. Nah, without further ado, hari ini kita kedatangan seorang tamu yang spesial dari Amerika, teman saya, kolaborator saya juga, Mr. Kevin Van Hook. Dia sudah menciptakan banyak sekali karya di kancah internasional dan di Amerika juga. Dari mulai Sina Princess Warrior zaman dulu sampai sekarang di Netflix Project Power, dan juga beberapa film yang ikonik yang mungkin sudah pernah lihat di film-film di layar bioskop dan di OTT juga. Dan di sini kita akan meminta beliau untuk melakukan sebuah sharing gitu, bahwa bagaimana sih perjalanannya di beliau sebagai seorang pribadi dari mulai awal karirnya sampai sekarang gitu, secara cepat, untuk ngasih lihat bahwa sebetulnya untuk mencapai industri ini kita semua bisa asal kita punya kemauan. Gitu. Nah, ini yang terpenting sebetulnya dari workshop ini adalah meningkatkan kesadarannya dulu bahwa hey, it's achievable gitu untuk mencapai tingkat tersebut. Nah, demikian dan di sini nanti bisa silakan dibuat pertanyaan-pertanyaannya, nanti tolong dicatatkan di dalam chatnya. Jadi makanya dicatatkan dipersingkat untuk ngobrolnya, tapi lebih kepada pertanyaan yang berkualitasnya juga, karena ini adalah kesempatan kita untuk tanya jawab sebenarnya gimana sih dia mengerjakan di sana, kemudian kehidupannya sendiri seperti apa gitu kan, dan kemudian menjalani karya-karya hingga sampai sekarang seperti bagaimana gitu. Nah itu bisa ditanyakan di situ. Chris, bagaimana?
Ya, ini kesempatan yang baik banget buat belajar dan networking ya, Ryan ya. Karena karir itu sebenarnya selain ilmu pengetahuan, networking itu juga penting banget sih gitu. Dan dengan acara-acara seperti ini, kita bisa networking dan kenalan dengan orang-orang yang sudah senior di bidangnya, dan kalau nggak di luar acara ini kayaknya kita susah banget deh bisa ngobrol atau kenal sama dia gitu sih. Gitu. So gunain kesempatan ini sebaik mungkin.
Yeah. So saya introduce sekarang Mr. Kevin Van Hook. Hi, how are you?
How are you doing?
Yeah. So start with telling a bit about yourself, and then show the young people here about how you start and everything. So the stage is yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much. First, I wanted to say thank you for having me and for inviting me to this superclass. It's very kind of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone here. So I started off my career writing and drawing comic books and comic strips, and then working as an editor and an art director and production manager at those kinds of companies. And then because I had always had a love of film and magic and illusion, I started playing with special effects and visual effects. And my hobby of being a computer hobbyist kind of merged with my interests. And so in the early 1990s, programs came along that allowed you to create CG graphics, 3D graphics, that were pretty cool and pretty acceptable and starting to be used on television. And that's why I started teaching myself how to do that. And then I moved from one side of the United States to the other. I moved from New York to California and started a small studio doing design work and print and so forth, and lots of trading cards and comic books and things to support me while I was teaching myself how to make movies and do visual effects.
Right, thank you. Yeah.
should I translate this, Ryan?
Yeah.
A bit?
Yeah, sure.
Jadi Kevin Van Hook mulai di industri ini dari usia yang sangat-sangat muda, umur 17 tahun. Awalnya dia di dunia komik, tapi dia juga cinta terhadap film. Dan setelah karirnya di dunia komik, dia kemudian mencoba pindah ke dunia film di sekitar tahun 90-an. Pada saat itu mulai ada program-program CG 3D yang bisa mendukung pembuatan film. Dia pindah dari New York ke California, dan di sana dia mendirikan sebuah perusahaan desain studio kecil, menerbitkan komik, card game, dan lain-lain untuk mensupport dia secara ekonomi sambil dia belajar sendiri software 3D ya, supaya bisa ngerti catch up dengan teknologi terbaru gitu.
Ya.
I have a slideshow presentation I could show if this is a good time to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, one moment here. And can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So, as we talked about, I've done comic books, film, and visual effects. And I started off, as I said, in comics. So I was very young. I was actually still in high school. And I started creating comic books. I was submitting to all the major companies, started getting work from some of the smaller companies, created a bunch of different original characters. And then fairly quickly, I started working. There was intermittent. Our comic book industry was going through changes a lot during that time period, where it was companies would pop up and grow and then go out of business. I kept working for companies that would go away. But I did get to work for Marvel, and I got to work eventually for DC, and I ended up writing the Flash Gordon Sunday comic strip for 2 years. And so I was very lucky and very fortunate to get to do the things I love. Would you like to translate that part?
Yes. Jadi Kevin Van Hook mulai berkarir dari sejak dia masih di SMA gitu, kemudian karena dia mulai dari sangat muda, dia mulai mendapatkan pekerjaan di penerbit-penerbit yang lebih indie, lebih kecil. Kemudian dari situ pada saat itu memang banyak penerbit yang tidak bertahan lama, jadi kemudian setelah beroperasi beberapa tahun kemudian tutup dan sebagainya, dan dia banyak bekerja di perusahaan-perusahaan tersebut sampai akhirnya beliau bisa bekerja di Marvel Comics dan juga DC Comics. Gitu. Yes.
I ended up creating an original character called Jack Frost, and I did multiple comic book series with the character. And then I found myself at Valiant Comics. So Valiant Comics, when I got there, was a distant, probably fourth biggest publisher in the business, leading behind Marvel and DC and probably Dark Horse Comics. But my timing was good. I was very lucky again. I was very fortunate. And I ended up there when we grew rapidly. And we went from selling just a few thousand books to many hundreds of thousands of books. And while there, I was mostly associated with writing The Eternal Warrior and Solar Man of the Atom. And eventually I co-created Bloodshot. And so Bloodshot was a character who had his memories erased, and he had his blood replaced with nanites, little tiny computers. And he became this sort of super soldier character that could heal, and he'd gone from being a bad person in his life to being somebody who was really a hero.
Oke. Jadi Kevin Van Hook menciptakan karakter original Jack Frost yang dia ciptakan dan sudah banyak terbit. Kemudian beliau pindah ke Valiant Comics yang pada saat itu adalah penerbit nomor 4 terbesar di Amerika di bawah Marvel, DC, dan juga Dark Horse. Nah, pada saat itu beliau datang pada saat yang tepat, di mana Valiant sedang maju sangat pesat dari populasinya sekitar ribuan buku sampai ratusan ribu. Jadi pada saat itu benar-benar masa keemasan dari Valiant. Di sana beliau menulis Eternal Warriors, Solar Man, dan juga Atom. Dan pada akhirnya beliau menciptakan komik Bloodshot yang kita tahu sudah menjadi major pictures di Hollywood yang keluar sekitar bulan April kemarin. Di situ kalau yang belum tahu mengenai karakter Bloodshot ini, karakter ini diberikan ketika itu sudah hampir meninggal, diberikan satu teknologi Nine Nights di mana dia bisa menjadi kuat gitu, dan awalnya dia bukan orang yang baik, tapi dengan kekuatan barunya dia mencoba berubah menjadi orang yang baik. Ya. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. So this is an overview. These are covers from various comic books I did. It just kind of shows you the pretty good example of all the different kind of comic books I wrote. So I did a lot of stuff for DC Comics. I did a lot of stuff for Valiant, some other independent books, and just a little bit along the way. And I wrote G.I. Joe Snake Eyes for IDW Comics. But my real goal, I always loved comic books, and it's what I wanted to do. But once I had some success in comics, I wanted to teach myself how to make movies, and I wanted to tell stories on a bigger stage. And so I started. I started to explore that, and I made my first film. It took me 5 years, and it was based off my Jack Frost comic book.
Okay. Kevin selalu, maksudnya dia suka banget sama komik, dan walaupun dia sudah membuat film, tapi along the way dia masih juga menulis komik untuk DC Comics. Dia bahkan membuat komik Snake Eyes untuk IDW. Jadi dari karya komiknya dia tuh tadi udah bisa dilihat banyak banget sih, dan variatif banget temanya gitu. Nah, kemudian dia mulai nih karirnya berpindah ke dunia film. Dan film pertama yang dia buat itu adalah based on Jack Frost, karakter komik yang dia ciptakan sebelumnya gitu. Mungkin Ryan abis ini bisa ini juga ya, bantu. Oke, Kevin.
So over the next several years, I ended up being able to make many more films. So I wrote, directed, edited, and produced a number of films. This one was called The Fallen Ones, and this particular image shows some of the DVD art from different places around the world, what it looked like in Japan, what it looked like in Mexico, in Russia. And just a wonderful experience getting to work with great actors and people that I respected and liked, and bring visual effects to those films. And because of my experience as a visual effects person, I was able to add a lot of production value to a lower budget. And I made 6 films back to back in 2004 to 2007. And this was another one called Voodoo Moon. And again, just telling the kinds of stories I like. So these are kind of comic book stories, horror stories that had a strong emphasis on visual effects and special effects.
Ya, jadi Ken Brown tadi sempat membuat beberapa film juga. Di antaranya tadi ada film yang dirilis di Jepang yang ada covernya tadi di Jepang, dan yang dia lakukan banyaknya adalah sebenarnya film-film horor, dan kenapa dia menyukai visual effect, karena dia merasa bahwa visual effect bisa memberikan satu added value gitu pada sebuah film production juga gitu. Nah, dari situ makanya dia mulai membuat juga mencoba untuk membuat film sendiri, producing, directing, writing juga gitu. Film-film dari beberapa film indie selanjutnya yang mostly bergenre horror gitu.
Iya. itu ini ya, kalau tadi ada gambar-gambar DVD-nya, covernya beda-beda ya. Biasanya kalau tiap negara tuh suka bikin cover beda-beda sesuai marketnya ya, Ryan ya?
Ya, betul.
Gitu.
Jadi kayak misalnya di Amerika cover seperti apa, ternyata di Jepang covernya lebih ada hype-nya gitu. Dibuat kayak monsternya tadi ada yang kayak Mami gitu, itu sebetulnya mungkin tidak setinggi itu, tapi karena interpretasi artinya berbeda-beda, makanya menjadi sesuatu yang menarik juga. Gitu. Nah ini adalah strip dari serangkaian film independen yang dia buat. Okay.
So speaking of visual effects, this is going to focus on the kinds of visual effects work I did. So as I was teaching myself how to make films, I was teaching myself how to create visual effects and transforming my design studio, which was really a print design studio, into a visual effects and animation company. And so the first feature film that I got to work on was called My Favorite Martian, with Jeff Daniels and Christopher Lloyd, and then I did Miss Congeniality. And I ended up on the 2 television series, Hercules and Xena, which was a great experience. When I had started doing visual effects professionally, I was a fan of these shows, and so I enjoyed watching them myself. And so it was actually the reason we moved to the specific little community in Los Angeles we did was because I knew that the company that did the effects for those shows was in Burbank, California. And it was just coincidence that 2 years later, I ended up on those TV series.
Alright. So akhirnya kemudian dari film itu akhirnya dia mulai mempelajari sendiri mengenai working in visual effects. Belajar sendiri di studionya. Awalnya studionya adalah sebuah print studio yang pada akhirnya menjadi sebuah visual effects studio. Film pertamanya itu adalah tadi. Can you go back one slide, Kevin?
I think so. I've not tried going back before. There we go.
Alright. So jadi film pertamanya adalah My Favorite Martian. Kemudian mungkin kita juga kenal film Miss Congeniality. Sekarang sudah 2 part. Nah, ini yang part yang pertama. Kemudian next one is the Xena, the Warrior Princess. Juga serial TV Hercules. Buat kita mungkin yang sudah agak-agak tua, mungkin kita kenal dengan this classic creation. Like we're just a fan of it here. In this series.
I still am too. It was wonderful to work on. I love Greek mythology anyway. These shows were about Greek mythology, and I got to work on creatures and skeletons with sword fights and all kinds of wonderful, digital matte paintings, and it was a great training ground.
Ya, so jadi dia menyukai film ini karena dia juga suka dengan mitologi dari Yunani. Kemudian juga dia juga banyak mengerjakan di dalam film ini kayak misalnya efek-efek kayak creatures-nya di awal-awal gitu kan. Kemudian efek berbagai fighting-nya, matte painting background-nya semua gitu. Nah, dan dia juga cukup beruntung bahwa waktu pertama kali dia kenal dengan orang-orang yang mengerjakan ini karena mereka berada di satu tempat yang sama di California, Burbank gitu. Dan pada akhirnya dari situ kemudian mereka mulai berkenalan dan akhirnya mendapat kesempatan untuk bekerja di show-show ini gitu. Dan dia sangat bangga gitu bisa ikut dalam proyek ini.
So that was an example of really kind of visualizing what I wanted to do, looking into it as far as what would increase my chances of doing it, and going after it, and I was lucky enough to be a part of those shows.
Ya, jadi ini adalah dia merasa beruntung bahwa dia bisa ikut dalam proyek ini dan memvisualisasikan apa yang dia inginkan gitu dalam kesempatan ini dan akhirnya bisa menjadi bagian dari proyek itu. Ya.
So not long afterwards, my studio started doing the animation for a TV series called NASCAR Racers. We also did something called Max Steel, which unfortunately it's very hard to find any images from the original show that we did, but we did an animated version of Max Steel. And Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the television show, which again had lots of CG effects. And during this time period, I was known primarily as a CG artist. I was a 3D animator. Did some texturing and rigging, a lot of lighting and animation. But my studio did we did all of it from modeling and texturing and rigging to animation and lighting.
Ya, nah kemudian dia menciptakan film kartun dari kayak seperti NASCAR Racers. Ini adalah sebuah karya klasik yang di zaman pada saat itu. Kemudian dia juga membuat series dari TV show dari serial yang Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Itu ada filmnya, versi originalnya yang dibintangi sama Nick Moranis dulu. Di serial TV ini. Nah, kemudian pada periode ini dia adalah bekerja sebagai seorang 3D CG artist gitu. Di mana semuanya dia mengerjakan dari modeling, texturing, apa semuanya dalam software yang dia pakai pada saat itu. I think you're using Lightwave at the time, right?
Yeah, at the time, television was kind of almost exclusively Lightwave 3D from NewTek, which was a 3D animation and modeling program that had originally been part of something called the Video Toaster, which was a video editing software that was still tape-based originally before things went digital completely. So it wasn't non-linear. You literally would take different VCRs and connect them together and edit. And Lightwave began as their titling and 3D animation software. And then it became far more successful than the master program.
Yeah. Ya, jadi pada saat itu dia memakai software yang mungkin saat ini udah lumayan antik ya gitu, seperti Lightwave, Video Toasters dan segala macamnya. Jadi bisa dibilang bahwa sebetulnya Kevin juga mengalami periode di mana dia menjadi salah satu pioneer lah di dalam CG Works di sana. Okay.
Not long after that, I sold my company, my visual effects company, to a much larger company called Film Roman. And Film Roman was known for animating The Simpsons and King of the Hill and X-Men Evolution. And they'd done a lot of work and been around a long time. And soon they gave me the resources where I could go out and start bringing in work from the studios. And so we began work on things like iRobot and Daredevil and a lot of work for New Line Cinema for their movie trailers and that sort of thing.
Nah, nggak lama sesudah dari pengerjaan yang tadi itu, dia akhirnya menjual VFX company-nya ke sebuah company namanya Film Roman. Nah, Film Roman ini sebuah perusahaan yang membuat animation seperti The Simpsons, King of the Hill, dan nggak lama dari situ dia akhirnya mulai mengerjakan film-film ini, antara lain adalah iRobot yang kita sangat kenal dan film pertama Daredevil.
So here's forgive the low resolution, but here's a little trailer showing a breakdown of some of the visual effects from iRobot.
Nah, ini adalah beberapa visual effect breakdown dari film iRobot pada zaman itu yang dibintangi oleh siapa?
So there were several visual effects houses attached as vendors on the show. There was ILM, and Weta, and my company. And we initially started off as sort of support for Weta, and then ended up doing our own shots as well. So lots of environmental background replacements, set extensions, additional robots, that kind of thing.
Nah, di sana beliau bekerja sebagai support untuk Weta Digital, untuk yang di New Zealand yang mengerjakan Lord of the Ring. Di sini dia mengerjakan berbagai background-nya, kemudian berbagai adegan-adegan seperti crowd robot-robot ini, kemudian virtual CG background semuanya. Nah.
So, following this, I went independent. I left the company and started doing all the major visual effects for the TV series Law & Order and all the variations of Law & Order. Had multiple series going on at the same time. And so I would travel back and forth from LA to New York and supervise on set. Supervising visual effects is something that's, it's different from creating them. But creating them helps you become a better supervisor, because if you have had to work with photography that's been shot that wasn't necessarily shot the best way, or it made it difficult for you because the green screen wasn't evenly lit. Those kinds of things, a good supervisor can make all those problems, if not go away, they can at least minimize them.
Oke. Sesudah itu Kevin juga masuk ke dalam mulai masuk ke dalam serial TV, which is yang pertama ini adalah Law and Order. Pada saat itu syuting di LA dan dia mensupervise on set. Dan berbeda dari sekadar misalnya membuat berbeda dengan misalnya yang bekerja untuk meng-create atau misalnya untuk film ini, serial ini, VFX supervisor itu harus bekerja sama dengan berbagai divisi gitu. Karena dia harus mengatur bagaimana berbagai hal yang terjadi di lapangan itu supaya bisa proper pada saat melakukan post production. Kayak misalnya ngelihat apakah ini green screen-nya sudah di setup dengan benar gitu kan, angle kameranya udah benar, direction-nya juga udah benarkah gitu dan sesuai dengan apa yang direncanakan gitu. Karena kalau tidak pasti akan banyak masalah di dalam production-nya gitu. Sehingga supervisor visual effects on set itu menjadi sangat penting dalam sebuah produksi film. Tanpa adanya supervisi VFX yang jelas dari sejak awal, sudah dipastikan pasti proyek-proyek itu tidak akan berjalan dengan baik gitu. Ya, dan VFX supervisor itu terlibat mulai dari sejak awal gitu, dari sejak tahap penulisan skrip dan kreatifnya dan semuanya gitu. Nah, sehingga bisa dibilang sangat penting bagi visual effects supervisor untuk bisa bekerja sama di dalam serial seperti ini supaya semuanya berjalan dengan baik dan akhirnya visi yang ingin dicapai oleh produser itu bisa benar-benar tertuang di dalam screen. Yeah.
And then I did 4.5 seasons of a TV series called Rizzoli and Isles. And Rizzoli and Isles was a great show to be a part of. It's also a police procedural kind of a show. One of the actresses plays a homicide detective. Her best friend is a coroner. And so they're working the same cases, and we learn about the mysteries that way. But it was an opportunity to take a show that was being shot largely on a studio backlot at Paramount in this case, and try to make it look like it was shot in Boston, Boston, Massachusetts, in the U.S. as just an example of trying to make something feel much bigger than it really was.
Alright. Nah, kemudian beliau juga bekerja di serial Rizzoli and Isles selama 4 season, sebuah police show mengenai tentang polisi. Nah, di dalam show ini menjadi sebuah kesempatan buat dia bagaimana serial ini yang sebetulnya di shot di lot atau di back sebuah studio saja, itu menggunakan visual effects untuk membuat seolah-olah bahwa ini di syuting di tempat lain, which is adalah originally di Boston, Massachusetts. Padahal sebenarnya dia cuma syuting di studio saja lot gitu. Nah itu mereka melakukan background replacement, memasang bangunan, kemudian juga membuat bagaimana supaya set studio yang tadinya sebenarnya cuma tempat itu aja menjadi sebuah background yang begitu penonton melihat itu menjadi sesuatu yang diverse dan seolah benar-benar di syuting di lokasinya. Yes.
So here's a reel that shows some visual effects from Rizzoli and Isles, Law and Order, and various shows that we did over the last several years. So this first shot is an example of what I was talking about. We shot this on the Paramount backlot. Those are sound stages. And then I did my best to make it look like it was shot in Boston. And so adding wakes and boats and bridges. If you're watching the background, you'll see that I'm adding an entire city square back there. This is from Law and Order. We had an episode where Sharon Stone guest starred. This particular episode of Southland was something that I got a thank you from the Television Academy for my contribution to stunt coordination, because I helped plan the stunt. There were lots of these kind of things, matte paintings, set extensions. So that's what we really shot. And then I spent some time working with Sony, and I did a number of their action films. And this is something called Marine 5. And all that gunplay is digital. It's real muzzle flashes, it's composited, all the damage on the ambulance. Ryan, should I stop and let you translate any of that?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, pada bagian yang pertama tadi, kita melihat bagaimana dia menambahkan background di set di studio. Yang tadinya set studio itu menjadi background misalnya di kota Boston, di jalanan mana, gitu kan gitu. Nah, itu yang pada saat itu dia mendapatkan banyak sekali pekerjaan untuk melakukan itu. Nah, kemudian juga ada di serial Law and Order, di mana Sharon Stone juga starring dalam film itu. Dia juga melakukan berbagai background replacement, location, augmentation, and everything. Dan kemudian juga tadi ada satu shot di mana ada orang yang tertabrak, yang sebenarnya di syutingnya terpisah gitu kan. Nah, dia juga di situ mendapatkan penghargaan dari Television Academy. Tentang bagaimana breakthrough dalam membuat shot tersebut, gitu, which is adalah sesuatu yang pada zaman itu adalah sesuatu yang luar biasa, gitu kan. Nah, kemudian di Sony juga dia membuat sejumlah film action yang kita lihat tadi, dari mulai tembakannya muzzle flash gitu, sampai kemudian berbagai hancur di mobil ambulans, dan semuanya itu adalah dibuat oleh dirinya gitu. Di zaman dimana pada saat computer technology itu belum setinggi saat ini gitu kan gitu. Sehingga bisa dibayangkan berbagai kesulitan teknis yang dia harus lakukan dengan keterbatasan teknologi yang ada untuk bisa mencapai shot itu gitu hasilnya.
Ryan,
ya.
Ini ya kalau dilihat-lihat bahwa aku juga nonton tuh serial Rizal and Isles itu, dan waktu nonton itu nggak kelihatan kalau itu ada VFX-nya. Nah, ini berarti apakah berarti VFX yang bagus itu yang kita nggak sadar gitu ya, Ryan?
Iya, betul sekali, betul Chris. Jadi kalau kita menonton karya-karyanya dia, kita justru tidak terdistract bahwa oh ini visual effect gitu kan gitu. Jadi justru salah satu highest compliment dalam visual effect adalah ketika orang-orang menonton tidak menyadari bahwa itu visual effect. Gitu. Mereka tidak menyadari bahwa di background itu banyak kerjaan visual effect-nya yang tidak terlihat, gitu kan. Dan itu yang mungkin menjadi mungkin di kita perlu menjadi suatu appreciation gitu.
Betul. Nah, bukan cuma ledakan gitu ya.
Iya. Ledakan, kemudian sampai yang pada saat tadi cuma drama doang gitu. Ternyata kan di situ di-syuting di tempat lain yang sebetulnya cuma set aja gitu. Dia nambahin jendelanya, dindingnya, apa semua gitu. Dan berbagai background yang di dalam visual effect itu. Jadi memang visual effect yang baik itu adalah visual effect yang justru tidak terlihat. Benar sekali itu. Alright.
I can play some more.
Yeah, play some more.
So we also do a lot of things like this, where we're adding monitors that really weren't on or weren't working, or they're just flat panels. We're extending sets, creating animations. So we created all of the scrolling video. And this is for a movie that was called 400 Days. That had Brandon Routh that played Superman and Dane Cook. I'll let you go ahead and translate a little bit of that. If you'd like to.
I think Ryan screen was freeze or something.
I see. I see that. I thought he was very still. So,
yeah,
well,
so
I can play some more of this.
I can explain it, Kevin.
Okay, if you'd like to, sure.
Jadi ada pekerjaan VFX lain seperti screen replacement. Jadi kalau ada adegan yang ada monitornya itu biasanya di shootnya kosong, nggak ada gambarnya gitu, dan nanti semua itu akan graphics dan gambar-gambar atau video apapun yang ada di monitor itu baru ditambahkan pada saat post production gitu. Oke, Kevin.
All right. And so this next shot is an example of a face replacement. So that's a different actor. Sadly, that particular actor had passed away. So I took his image from here and put it on this actor who was a body double.
Ya, jadi yang tadi barusan adalah pergantian di wajah ya. Jadi salah satu aktornya sadly sudah meninggal dunia. Jadi ketika di shoot itu mereka harus mengganti wajahnya. Dan ini mungkin bisa juga contohnya sama dengan Fast and Furious ya. Itu juga kan ada sempat wajahnya Paul Walker juga diganti. Something similar like that. Okay, Kevin.
I understood what you said. And this is an example of crowd replacement. So in this case, our filmmakers had shot way late into the night, and a lot of their extras had already gone home. So they had empty stands when they turned the camera around to shoot this angle. So we filled the stands up more. We didn't want them completely full, but we wanted more people than they had.
Oke, jadi ini salah satu contoh penambahan crowd ya, orang-orang gitu, karena pada saat itu ketika syuting sudah terlalu malam sehingga ekstrasnya sudah sedikit, tinggal sedikit. Nah ini mereka Kevin Van Hook menambahkan banyak crowd lah supaya kelihatan lebih ramai. Yes.
And this is just a small example of something that comes up a lot, which is fire and smoke. So this is something we find ourselves doing fairly often.
Ya, ini adalah contoh VFX untuk api dan juga asap ya, yang sering banyak kita lihat dan memang banyak dipakai di film lah. Yes, Kevin.
And so, hi Ryan. And so I ended up joining and working with a company called Worldwide Effects, and they did some great projects when I was there, and before and since. They did the Conan the Barbarian with Jason Momoa, and that was being worked on the same time that I was working on Trespass with Nicolas Cage and Nicole Kidman. And I also got to do Olympus Has Fallen, so I was there for a pretty good portion of the of post-production. And this is a visual effects overview of that film. You'll see lots and lots of set extensions, environments.
Okay. So di dalam film ini adalah contoh dari pekerjaannya di Worldwide Effects di film Olympus Has Fallen, di mana mereka men-shooting seolah-olah White House itu lagi diserang, Washington DC. Nah mereka sebenarnya syutingnya di tempat lain. Nah cuman dengan visual effect company di mana dia bekerja, Worldwide Effects, dia membuat bagaimana si lokasi yang sebenarnya syutingnya di tempat lain itu dibuat seolah berada di tengah kota di Washington DC gitu. Dimana kita bisa lihat di video ini White House itu sebenarnya cuma dibangun sebagian saja setnya. Nah, kemudian sebagian besar itu dibuat oleh komputer CG artisnya, sehingga dilihat seolah-olah bahwa itu actionnya benar-benar terjadi di White House. Gitu. Nah, jadi bisa dibilang bahwa banyak sekali background-background yang di dalam film ini itu sebetulnya adalah bukan background asli syuting di White House, tapi justru mereka syutingnya di tempat lain. Dan ini juga ada establishing shot White House yang sebetulnya White House-nya tidak ada, semuanya dibuat di 3D CGI. Film ini bisa dilihat di OTT dan di manapun yang kita bisa, ini Olympus Has Fallen, dan sudah ada beberapa sequelnya juga.
Iya. Ini kan nggak mungkin ya kita kayaknya film syuting di White House beneran ya.
Iya, betul.
Bener.
Nah, dan tapi juga justru artnya adalah bagaimana penonton ngerasa bahwa itu benar-benar di White House gitu kan.
Iya.
Waktu dulu kita nonton ini, kita juga nggak nyadar itu gimana mereka bisa dapat izinnya gitu kan. Gitu. Ternyata dibuat di Worldwide Effects gitu. So, jadi sebetulnya tugas CGI ini sendiri juga bisa membantu filmmaker dalam mencapai visinya gitu. Dimana mungkin pada saat kita syuting nggak mungkin kita mendapatkan izinnya atau tempat-tempat impossible. Nggak mungkin kita kan kayak di sini misalnya kita ngeledakin sesuatu di Istana Negara misalnya, itu kan nggak mungkin. Jadi kita harus membuat itu di CG komputer. Dan kita lihat di sini, artinya CGI artis juga harus mengerti sinematografi, berkomunikasi juga, gitu kan. Bagaimana membuat lighting yang realistik mungkin juga, gitu kan. Jadi memang sebenarnya CGI artis itu banyak harus belajar berbagai bidang yang sebelumnya belum pernah mereka pelajari, gitu. Dan mereka harus mengerti gitu, visi directingnya, visi sinematografi lightingnya, gitu. Editingnya juga gitu. Berarti mungkin buat teman-teman yang mungkin pengen melihat ini lebih jelas, bisa dilihat di YouTube sebetulnya breakdown Olympus Has Fallen Worldwide Effects, bisa di search.
So you can see that there was a lot of visual effects in that film.
Yeah.
So and that's a small fraction of it. There were over 500 monitor shots. And when you say that, you have to realize that we had scenes that took place in sort of the the security room where there might have been 30 or 40 monitors in the room in a smoke-filled environment. Each one had their own distinct footage playing on them. So it was a very complex show to do.
Ya. Nah, di dalam Olympus Has Fallen ini tadi dia bilang mungkin bisa hampir ada sekitar 500 major shot yang merupakan visual effect. Masih ada lagi shot-shot yang dalam security room di mana ada monitor-monitornya yang banyak. Kemudian juga ada di situ bisa kita lihat ada juga shot-shot yang di lapangan itu ada asapnya gitu di foreground. Nah, untuk asapnya di remove taruh sesuatu di belakang kan itu sesuatu yang kompleks karena asap kan sangat halus sangat itu. Sehingga pengerjaannya juga lumayan intens gitu. Jadi sesimpel hal bahwa ada asap di foreground aja sebenarnya itu bisa menjadi sesuatu pekerjaan yang lumayan berat gitu. Nah, di situ makanya diperlukan adanya visual effects supervisors dan yang lainnya di lapangan supaya itu bisa berjalan dengan mulus. Alright.
So earlier I mentioned that I had created a comic book character called Bloodshot. So some 28 years after I created that comic book, we got to see the movie come to life. So starring Vin Diesel from Sony, and this is the original comic book cover. This is the Vin Diesel version. We premiered in theaters in March, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. It was only in theaters for a few days, but at least here in the States, it's continued to play in drive-in theaters, and it's done very, very well on demand and on Blu-ray. And I've been told, I have fans reach out to me to let me know that they've gotten to see it in theaters around the world. You know, wherever places are opening up, many of the theaters are still showing.
Oke. Nah, kemudian Kevin juga dulu kan kita ingat dia menciptakan karakter komik yang Bloodshot. Nah, setelah 28 tahun dari dia pertama kali menciptakan karakter ini, akhirnya karakter ini dibuat filmnya dengan bintang utamanya Vin Diesel. Nah, premiernya kemarin itu waktu di bulan Maret. Actually pada saat awalnya harusnya doing well, tapi kemudian terjadilah pandemi dan lockdown itu kan gitu. Nah, akhirnya distributionnya lebih banyak dilakukan di OTT dan on demand, yang ternyata justru hasilnya lumayan bagus menurut statistik yang mereka dapatkan di sana gitu. Dan sekarang juga Bloodshot masih terus bermain di ada drive-in theaters di Amerika, juga di Blu-ray gitu. So far Bloodshot sendiri sebenarnya doing quite okay walaupun terkena pandemik tersebut gitu.
Di Netflix sudah ada sih.
Nah, Netflix ya udah ada, betul.
Ya.
Jadi kalau kalian ada yang punya account di Netflix, silakan lihat Bloodshot, pekerjaannya Kevin ini. Nah, ini Kevin waktu di premiernya.
So these are images from the premiere, and so literally this was March 10th. And so it was just a few days before Los Angeles at least shut down. But so this is the cast, the director, and they pulled me up on the little stage there on the red carpet with them, which was an honor. And then a picture of Vin and me. The film was shot entirely in South Africa, and using South African crew. And I think they did a really great job with it.
Nah, ini adalah pada saat suasana premier di tanggal 10 Maret, beberapa hari pas sebelum LA itu shutdown karena pandemi gitu kan gitu. Nah, film ini sendiri juga di shot di South Africa dan menggunakan kru South Africa yang menurut mereka juga kualitasnya udah bagus-bagus gitu. Nah, ini bisa menjadi sebuah refleksi juga, apakah bisa nggak misalnya di Indonesia suatu saat bisa mencapai hal seperti ini gitu. I was saying to them that the South African crew did a very good job, and it's a reflection whether the Indonesian crew also can do that in the future.
Oh, absolutely, I'm sure. No, they were very hardworking, very, very nice people, very skilled. And I also just wanted to go on the record that that's the last haircut I had. So.
Dan dia juga bilang bahwa kru-kru di sana sangat bekerja keras dan kreatif juga, dan dia yakin Indonesia juga bisa seperti itu. Dan juga di foto ini adalah foto terakhirnya untuk sempat potong rambut. Jadi sampai sekarang dia belum sempat potong rambut lagi karena lagi tengah-tengah lockdown pandemi itu gitu.
So if this thing keeps going, you'll see it down to here. So. But,
yeah.
I have a trailer for the movie as well, and so this if you're not familiar with what Bloodshot is as a movie, this shows some great effects. It shows how they interpreted our technology that we told the stories about, and here it is.
And initiate sequence.
Yeah.
Memories are made of this. What is this place? I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you got yourself killed. At OST, we rebuild the most important assets in the U.S. military. Soldiers like yourself. You're the first who we've successfully managed to bring back. Improved, enhanced. With the technology in your veins, you have an army inside you. It will not only make you stronger, it will heal you instantly. Now tell me, me, do you remember anything?
Where are you going?
I got unfinished business. Find the man who murdered my wife and killed her.
Oh, that's not good. All right, shut him down. And initiate sequence. Okay, who is the next target for elimination? Tell me, do you remember anything?
Do I know you guys?
I don't think so.
I've been manipulating you.
What you think is real? Sometimes I... And initiate sequence.
You can't control me forever.
Sure about that? Revenge is what makes a man like you exceptional.
You know nothing about men like me.
That is absolutely fantastic.
I feel like I just read this. Are they playing this on repeat?
Okay.
Itu tadi adalah trailer dari film Bloodshot, di mana di situ memperlihatkan berbagai visual effect yang dia lakukan dalam film ini. Dan itu juga menurut dia Bloodshot ini salah satu film yang bisa baik dalam menerjemahkan bagaimana apa yang diinginkan oleh dia dan untuk dituangkan ke dalam visual filmnya menggunakan teknologi. Jadi dari film ini memperlihatkan bagaimana perlunya ada sebuah kolaborasi antara art design, kemudian ideas-nya, dan dijembatani dengan teknologi untuk mencapai visualisasi yang diinginkan. Gitu.
So about 1.5 years ago, I was called in to help supervise the visual effects for a movie called Project Power, and for Netflix. Wonderful film, stars Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it's full of visual effects. And it's a superhero movie, with the idea being that there's a drug on the street that if you take it, it will either give you a superpower for 5 minutes or it will kill you and you will blow up. And this, people want this because, there's a chance that they can be super strong or catch on fire or fly or that sort of thing. And Jamie Foxx is trying to stop the bad guys.
Nah, 1,5 tahun yang lalu, akhirnya dia diminta untuk menghandle sebuah project di Netflix berjudul Project Power, yang dibintangi oleh Jamie Foxx, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, bercerita mengenai obat yang membuat orang bisa mendapatkan kekuatan superpower selama 5 menit dengan berbagai kemampuannya gitu kan. Nah, di sini dia bekerja sama dengan visual effects supervisor lainnya untuk membuat film ini mencapai visi dan tujuannya gitu melalui visual effect. Karena berbagai efek dalam film ini tidak mungkin bisa dilakukan tanpa adanya visual effects yang seamless tersebut gitu, yang berkualitas tinggi gitu. Jadi orang juga melihat film ini juga tidak terdistract bahwa itu visual effect, tapi justru menjadi sesuatu yang membuat storytelling ini menjadi sangat kuat.
Yeah. So what I'm about to play is a visual effects breakdown, showing a lot of shots from the film, mostly concentrating towards the beginning on one of the characters who does catch on fire, and at the very end, I'll show you a little clip from the actual set where because we used real fire elements and actually shot a man on fire and then replaced his face and features.
Ya. Jadi berikut ini dia akan memperlihatkan sebuah visual effect breakdown dari Project Power ini, dari mulai misalnya ada orang yang menjadi semacam manusia api gitu kan, kemudian face replacement, efek invisibility, dan ada banyak lagi. Semua ini bisa teman-teman bisa lihat di Netflix Nah, ini kita akan memperlihatkan behind the scene-nya dan visual effect background. Oke.
Alright. So if you look closely, occasionally you'll see little lights that are on the actors, and that was to give us interactive light on the set. This was a character who didn't have the power of invisibility, but he was more of a chameleon. And so he would blend in with his background. So that, and sorry, so right here, one moment, sorry, is an example of the, let me show you the better example of the little interactive lights that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Good idea. So
let me just scrub back here, sorry. So you see these things, these are actually little light panels that were built into the makeups. And that gave us real glowing interactive light on the figure, the environment, and then we could take it from there and add our fire, and it would just blend much better.
Okay. So jadi
you see we have tracking marks on the faces, that sort of thing.
This video, maybe we can.
So there was still a lot of digital effect work on top of it, but we used a lot of real fire, real smoke, those kind of elements.
After this video, maybe we can scrub one by one per frame so I can explain it.
Say it again, please.
After this video, maybe we can go over frame by frame so
some
I can
specific
explain.
shots.
Yeah,
sure.
From the beginning, so I can explain to the audience what we do here.
All right. The tools are not the most intuitive in my presentation software.
Okay. Is this video later on we can share to them, to the audience?
Yes. And then this is what we actually shot on set. So that's just recorded off the monitor with my phone. And it's always exciting to shoot fire. So in our story, Jamie Foxx is trying to find his daughter. There's a young lady who's involved in this, and he kind of keeps getting confused about whether or not the young lady's his daughter. He's reliving this past, and he ends up crashing into this cornfield. And so you see there, they cut it very quickly. They edited it very fast, but you'll see that on the stage, this is what we really shot. So this is composited out the windows. We shot against a blue screen, but you'll see things moving in slow motion, because that car is actually rotating. This is another pass where we did just glass moving. So we had some general debris. And I'll go back to the video, but this is to show you the car. So you see that there's a machine back there, like a bit of construction equipment that has it sort of like on a forklift and is rotating that car with the actors in it. So that was a pretty fun night.
All right.
So
Okay.
would you like me to go back to the video?
Yeah, go back to the video, and then we go
And I think, to be honest with you, I think I think things are clearer. There's better fire stuff at the end. So this was an official video release, but I prefer the fire stuff at the end. But this is our chameleon character. So he wore GoPro cameras attached to his body in different places, so he could be recording what's behind him and around him, and that could be used as part of our simulation.
Oke. So, jadi kita lihat di dalam video ini ada beberapa contoh visual effects. Pertama, yang di shot ini kalau kita nanti lihat di filmnya, ini adalah orang yang seperti chameleon. Apa istilahnya kalau chameleon, Chris? The chameleon is a bunglon. Bunglon, ya betul. Bunglon. Nah, bagaimana caranya adalah di badannya itu, di dada dan di punggungnya itu memakai kamera GoPro. Nah, kamera GoPro itu ngerekam semua video viewpoint yang di belakangnya dengan lensa fish eye juga depannya. Nah, kemudian nanti oleh kita footage itu di badan orangnya gitu. Sehingga nanti dibuat seakan-akan efek seolah dia kayak semi transparan seperti bunglon gitu.
Ryan.
So those images that the GoPro camera captured were used to create this texture map on his body. So it's picking up on a little bit of the car, picking up on the bags, the concrete below him, the white car behind him. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Kevin, is there any? I thought when I saw this scene, I thought this actor used green suit, but he wasn't. So is there any particular reason why you choose this method?
We use different techniques for different shots. A shot that I supervised that's not on this demo, he was wearing a flesh-colored full body suit with the cameras. And it's the stunt where he actually crashes into the window. He's riding a bicycle. He spins and crashes into the car. So there were different techniques used, but I think they decided that they just wanted to try to avoid the green screen, the green bodysuit.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
But you'll see how, as he gets closer to the white cars, he starts to pick up more of the color of the white. You know, this is still the bus. So that was the idea. It's an interesting thing. It's a technique that you don't see a lot of people using. And then we have some tracking marks. You'll see different places on his body.
Nah, di sini kita bisa lihat bahwa sebelumnya kan biasanya kita mendengar bahwa ada yang memakai efek seperti ini kalau orang memakai green suit gitu. Nah, kalau dalam film ini enggak, pada akhirnya mereka desain untuk menghindari memakai green suit supaya bisa dapetin looks alami dari aktornya juga, itu pertama. Terus yang kedua, di beberapa adegan ini mereka juga ada si stuntman yang melakukan adegan ini, misalnya keluar dari jendela apa segala macam, mereka memakai baju yang sebenarnya memakai kostum yang warnanya sama seperti kulit gitu, sebenarnya untuk melindungi badannya supaya nggak kena pecahan. Tapi at the end akhirnya mereka tidak berusaha untuk menghindari sama sekali memakai green screen. And then I would like to explain this fire. And then di dalam shot yang ini kita lihat kan sebenarnya ini manusia api gitu kan gitu. Nah, terus kan kita biasanya kalau sebagai filmmaker suka nanya gimana supaya si manusia api ini, api digital tersebut bisa blending dan kemudian realistik. Satu cara yang realistik adalah kan bagaimana si api itu mengcast cahaya ke setnya. Makanya jadi si aktor stunt yang memerankan si orang manusia api ini, dia memakai LED screen, LED lamp di badannya. LED lamp berwarna api ini yang kemudian memberikan cahaya ke sekelilingnya, dan kemudian akhirnya nanti CG artisnya akan menghilangkan si LED lamp tersebut dan diubah menjadi api digital. Nah, sehingga nanti aktor dengan CGI flame-nya, CGI apinya, dan environment-nya jadi menyatu dengan benar karena kita memakai si LED lamp itu untuk memberikan efek api tersebut ke lighting sekitar dari orang tersebut. Ya.
So you can see those LED lights, and you see the rope light that goes all the way around the tub.
Yeah.
So all that is just that goal of giving us that interactive light. This is what we shot, or this is what we ended up with.
Jadi lighting tadi yang LED lights dalam bathtub di badannya semua itu adalah untuk memberikan interactive lighting ke sekeliling catnya. Nah, setelah itu baru tadi kita lihat di komposit terakhir baru jadi sebuah api digital yang membara besar gitu. Nah, gabungan antara CGI dengan practical effect itu yang membuat shot tersebut menjadi lebih realistik dan berhasil. Okay.
So again, you can see that we've got little marks on the face. That's for tracking, because we knew that we would probably be replacing his entire head with a CG head, just to have the most control. And it turns out we managed to keep a good portion of it and just sort of track our features onto that.
Nah, tadi di muka aktornya tersebut dikasih tracking marker hitam kecil-kecil gitu. Itu sebenarnya untuk ngebantu CG artisnya untuk memasang si tekstur efeknya itu ke kulitnya gitu kan. Karena pergerakan kulitnya kan berbeda-beda di tiap bagian muka. Nah, kemudian marker tersebut dihapus dan kemudian dipasanglah efek yang seperti bunglon tersebut. Jadi kayak footage dari GoPro yang di belakang kepalanya itu dipasang ke mukanya. Nah, kemudian teksturnya itu di-track ke mukanya sehingga dia blending seamlessly gitu. Ya.
Ultimately, we had characters that were like our camouflage man. We had our man that's on fire. So we were dealing with lots of different kinds of effects. A lot.
Kevin, sorry, your voice is being muted. Sorry, I think your speaker is mute.
Odd. Yeah, it said one of the hosts had muted me.
Okay.
All good. Hang on here. So we had all these different kinds of effects to deal with. We had fire, we had ice, we had all CG characters at times. So this is a good example of showing the final result and then what we actually shot on set.
Jadi di dalam show ini mereka bergiling dengan berbagai elemen dari mulai api, fire, ice, es, dan kemudian elemen-elemen lainnya juga. Jadi menjadi sebuah challenge tersendiri dalam melakukannya gitu. Tadi diperlihatkan bagaimana hasil komposit terakhirnya yang digital fire dan kompositnya sudah sangat blending di compare dengan apa yang mereka shot di set di mana aktor stuntnya itu memakai semacam kayak kostum yang dibalur dengan bahan buat pembakar kemudian dibakar gitu kan untuk di shot. Okay.
I'll let you go ahead and just explain what is happening here.
Alright. Nah, di shot ini Jamie Foxx dengan putrinya itu dengan seorang anak yang pada karakter pendampingnya di dalam film ini dia mengalami flashback di mana tiba-tiba dia menemukan dirinya, oh dia sedang dikejar oleh orang-orang jahat gitu kan. Nah, dalam adegan ini terlihat bagaimana dia mengalami kecelakaan, kemudian di dalam mobilnya itu dia berputar, crash gitu kan. Dan kalau kita lihat di filmnya itu ada kaca-kaca yang pecah, kemudian seolah-olah kameranya berada di dalam kameranya itu berada di dalam mobil tersebut melihat suasana bagaimana mereka terguling. Sebenarnya ini di shot dengan beberapa layer. Jadi ada layer yang aktornya sendiri memakai mesin yang diputar itu, kemudian ada layer tersendiri on layer untuk yang pecahan kaca. Itu di shot terpisah sendiri dan kemudian nanti disatukan belakangan. Nah, ini adalah shot di mana rig mobil tersebut diangkat dengan mesin dan diputar. Nah, di sini kita bisa melihat bahwa sebenarnya di cover di green screen mobil tersebut sebenarnya ada di rigging, di belakangnya pakai ada mesin berat, diputar pakai piston gitu. Nah, aktornya syuting di dalam situ memakai blue screen dan kemudian di shot yang lainnya without actors keluar mereka syuting untuk mengambil yang pecahan kacanya. Nah, kemudian semuanya itu disatukan menjadi satu shot yang sama. Sehingga dia dapatkanlah hasil yang terakhir seperti yang terlihat nanti di film. Okay, alright.
And as I was saying earlier, one of the rules of being on set is you never ever ask for a photograph with a celebrity. And I always obey that, except there. So. Now, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, this was the last day of filming. It was the very last night, and this was at the lunch break. And Joseph was just a wonderful guy, and somebody else was taking a picture, and he asked if I wanted to grab a photo, and I said yes. So.
Ya, salah satu rules di dalam filmmaking itu adalah kita profesional harusnya jangan pernah meminta untuk foto bersama selebriti di dalam set filmnya gitu kan. Itu yang selalu dia obey. Tapi untuk kali ini ini adalah hari terakhir syuting. Kemudian pada saat hari terakhir syuting itu tiba-tiba dia mendapat kesempatan untuk lagi bersama dengan si Joseph Gordon-Levitt untuk berfoto bersama dan akhirnya dia breaking the rules-nya sendiri gitu.
Karena ditawarin ya.
Karena ditawarin, betul. Gordon-Levitt ini dia orangnya sangat nice gitu, sangat humble juga gitu, jadi sangat friendly gitu. Alright, cool. And yeah, thank you. And we already have lots of questions from many people.
Okay.
We are listing it right now. So first of all, first one is from Aditya Nugraha. He's a music producer. He said that he's asking that how long you're staying in one comic period. I mean, for example, in Valiant era.
How long was the Valiant era? My time there? I joined in March of '92 and continued to write and be involved with them until October of '96. So 4.5 years.
Wow. 4.5 years. Mm-hmm. All right. And then another one, Nathaniel David Halason Sirait. He's a student. He wants to know whether you're self-taught or going to a formal education to learn what you're learning right now.
I'm entirely self-taught. I would be much better if I had had a formal education.
Nah, that's sebuah insight yang bagus. That's a good one. I mean, like we all in this industry mostly self-taught. Me and
no, I only kid a little bit about that. I think I would have benefited from being around formal education, being taught. I wouldn't have had to have figured so many things out myself, but I learned what I did learn. I learned very deeply because I was figuring it out myself, because I was passionate about it.
Jadi beliau juga bisa belajar sendiri karena dia melakukannya gitu, terjun langsung gitu kan gitu, sehingga dia mau nggak mau harus bekerja keras untuk mempelajari semuanya karena dia berada langsung dalam pekerjaan industrinya gitu. Jadi walaupun sebenarnya beliau bilang bahwa sebetulnya sebenarnya ada lebih punya advantage juga kalau memang belajar secara formal gitu kan. Tapi but he's doing his best to overcome that self learning. Oke. Mas Chris mungkin ada yang berikutnya siapa lagi?
Okay, Kevin. This question is from Andra Fembriarto. As a film director, how involved should he or she be in the VFX planning phase?
I think they should be involved as much as possible. As a filmmaker myself, I want to have a good idea what the plan is before we shoot it, when we're shooting it, and what it's going to come out like in post. So I'm a big proponent of storyboarding. I didn't touch on this, but I storyboarded movies like The 13th Warrior, and it's I'm used to working with directors who have a vision. I think that's the best way to be. Sometimes they're vague and they need to see something, but if you really have a vested interest in wanting to know how your project is going to turn out, you should be involved in the planning of the VFX.
Ryan, should we translate the answer, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. Kalau buat yang menanyakan tadi siapa Andra? Kalau kayaknya udah ngerti kok.
Ngerti ya? Oke. So
okay. Yeah. This one from Daniel Saria, the dude, my partner. He said that. So Kevin, how long does it took for you to be a professional visual effects creator? I mean, like knowing you started as a comic creator. So how long does it take to transition and learn?
It took me a couple of years to really be professional. I was self-taught, so I was trying to figure out how to do things, and and then I would show my work to professionals and get feedback and criticism, which is the same thing I did in comic books, and then I would go home and apply that, and then try again.
I see.
Okay.
All right.
Next question is from Pak Nayaka Untara. Hi, I was wondering what is the differences of VFX works for TV series, movie, theatrical, and digital platform, probably like for mobile phone, something. Is there any differences in the process, on the thought process or quality when you do VFX for, let's say, for theatrical movie, or maybe for something that is going to be played in a smartphone or something like that?
Traditionally, there was a big difference between television and theatrical film. So when I did My Favorite Martian, we were averaging 2 or 3 weeks on a shot, that we would have that much time to create a shot. And then I went and did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and I did my first pass, which looked good, but it was a first pass in a day. And they said, sold, it's done. And I was like, no, give it back, I'm not done. And so, because I wanted more time to do it, to work on it and make it good. And that was just that difference between the schedules and the budgets of television and film. Today, some television rivals theatrical film. You look at something like Lovecraft Country or Game of Thrones, those are theatrical film quality effects in many cases.
So basically it depends on the budget and also the timeline?
Budget, well, those, they go hand in hand. So budget is almost always what's dictating the time. Okay. And clients love to say things like, good news, I've got more time. But then they tell you, but I don't have any more money. And it makes it difficult.
So more time, if there's no money, still not working, right? So
it's hard. I mean, I work a lot with independent filmmakers too, and I spend time trying to help young filmmakers or new filmmakers get their projects done, and it's challenging because, you know, they want it to look like the stuff I did for iRobot or the stuff I did for, you know, the Project Power, and it's like, that's not what you shot. And, You know, you don't have the money just to pay me for weeks at a time to finesse something like that.
Oh,
so it's challenging, but you do your best.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I haven't done much in terms of smartphone delivery or that sort of thing. So I can't really speak to that. But it would be the same thing. It almost always comes down to time and money.
Ya, itu menjadi sebuah masukan bagus bahwa mau format apapun juga sebetulnya pengerjaannya sama gitu kan. Karena pada akhirnya ketika kita deliver mau ke layar lebar atau mau smartphone atau Netflix atau apapun, misalnya katakan Netflix gitu ya, tetap aja outputnya akan tetap let's say di 4K or UHD. So basically the work is just the same for any kind of platform. So and then dan semuanya akan bergantung pada budget, of course, and time gitu untuk melakukannya. Jadi kita tidak bisa kita nggak bisa membuat sebuah solusi hanya juga dengan melemparkan salah satunya aja gitu. Misalnya kayak bisa nggak lebih cepat atau gimana dengan lebih banyak budget ya? Mungkin bisa, mungkin enggak. Itu tergantung per case-nya juga gitu. Tapi juga dengan less budget, dengan quality yang minta sama seperti yang dilakukan di feature film seperti itu sama sekali nggak mungkin juga gitu kan. So it's all the eternal question of time, budget, quality.
Right. Yeah, the three sides of the triangle.
Yeah, because of the triangle, yes. Indeed. Oh yeah,
fast, cheap, and good. Pick two.
The impossibility. Right.
Okay.
And I see that some of our professionals here are also want to ask you, how do you work together from the pre-production, you know, from the beginning, from the concept art all the way back to the visual effects at the final screen? What kind of experience that you have in real life?
Well, I mean, I've been very fortunate as a filmmaker. Being an independent filmmaker taught me a lot, so that when I'm on set, I'm very comfortable in almost any role that's being done there. So I can speak to a gaffer, I can speak to the director of photography, I can speak to the art department, and intelligently, and I have a real conversation about what we need to get to the end. And I understand what it takes for them to do it, so I don't make unrealistic demands. So in terms of like the episode of Southland that I mentioned where the guy was hit by the truck, I was brought in very early, there was planning. You know, they asked me how I would do it. I said, if I were doing it, I would use a ratchet gag, which is where you have a person on the rope and he's pulled back very violently. And the stunt coordinator agreed with me, and we would do multiple passes of that truck. And a clean plate. A clean plate is something where the effect isn't in it, so we can use that to put back the area where there were wires or ropes or rigs or crew. And you know, and it's a handheld, it's a steady cam shot, so it's moving all over the place. So it has to be tracked. But the reality, and just to speak to that shot, you're never going to match the speed of a truck to a person being yanked out of frame on a rope. So the reality, even though it won for what we did as a stunt, and we really did do the stunt, once the man left the ground, I took over and animated him. And so I broke his limbs and had him do that, just as a 2D gag. But I'm very involved from concept, storyboarding, if there is storyboarding. I'll suggest shots if that's appropriate. If they don't want my opinion on that, I'm always very careful, because I am a filmmaker, that I don't want them to think I'm trying to make their movie. I'm trying to direct their movie. So but often if a director is very comfortable in his own work and his own ego, he says, I know you're a director, what would you do here? And then I'll tell them. And that's a great way to work, because then they can make the decision, oh, that sounds really cool, but we don't have time to do it. Or, nah, you know, that doesn't sound like something I want to do, or it doesn't fit the rest of what we're shooting, or whatever, but at least we have a conversation.
Okay. Kevin, do you,
Yes,
when you start working on a project, do you usually given a certain budget? So when you design the scene and suggested any treatment, are you always have that budget in mind, something or
Yes.
something like that?
So typically what happens though, and I'm only saying this half jokingly, but usually what happens is I'm asked to give a bid. I give a bid and they go, that's really a lot of money. And then they go and hire somebody's cousin. And then that cousin messes up and they come back to me and say, we've already spent half the money that was already less than what we said that you wanted, but we would like you to finish it. And then I usually shrug and go, okay, let me see what I can do. And that's kind of how my life goes. But on bigger projects, they actually do pay attention. And I can give them a real budget. And we can then talk about, okay, if it is more than they want to spend, then we can talk about what they want to cut, or they can talk about what they want to focus on. And, but yeah, I'm very conscious of costs and what I think it should cost to do things.
All right. Wow, Kevin, that last answer actually made me a bit tearish, tears in my eyes, because I'm not alone. We're not alone in that. Me and Chris.
I think we're kindred spirits, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'll go to the next question. We can continue later talking about that.
Yeah, and it is the way the business goes.
Okay, it's from Dede, Chris Diantoro. He's a college student. Is there some kind of fundamentals that we need to acquire or need to master in visual effects? Is it about software, technical software, or is it about the art? Because I don't think anybody can do visual effects, become a VFX supervisor without knowing the art, right. Kind of, yeah.
I mean, I think it's possible to learn it, but it is better if you have that experience as an artist who's having to work with it, so you know why you're making those choices. As far as my advice would be to tell anybody to just observe as much as they can. So look at real life, look at nature, look at film as well, and try to understand film storytelling, try to understand, so you can have a real conversation of understanding that if you were really filming a motion picture and you have a wide shot that it's lit a certain way, but when you come in and do the close-ups, they're going to come in and move those lights to make it the prettiest shot they can for the close-ups. So you have to apply that same thinking to when you now do a close-up of your CG creature, so that it's now a hero shot, a beauty shot. So those kinds of things. The software will always change. Right now for compositing, Nuke is a very, very popular program around the world. I'm an After Effects person. I have been for 20 some years. The Maya is very popular, but things like Blender are starting to really become professional alternatives, and it's free. And Unreal for virtual production is a very exciting area, just in the last year or two, where it's becoming a real viable option. So I think I would encourage people to be passionate, to be curious, to learn it because it's something you want to learn, not necessarily because you want to make a living at it. Because if you're good at it and you do those things, usually the making a living at it part comes along with it. But but you can't replace that kind of knowledge that you get from just being passionately curious. One of my favorite times in my career was when I would go home from work, having worked on My Favorite Martian during the day, and then at night I was building a digital desert in Lightwave. and because I wanted to create a photorealistic environment. And this is long before there was photogrammetry or anything like that. So I was doing my best to fake that. And it's, but you know, and one of my employees who was learning right with me, he was going home and building a dragon because that's what he was interested in. So we then flew that dragon in my desert. So it's that passion and curiosity, I think, will take you farther than any software, because that will also drive you to learn the software.
Okay, great. And also there's a story that I remember when we were talking weeks ago, that the story about you, like when you were young, you're kind of like facing the creators and everything around the country to like basically, oh, this is my work and everything. Yeah, can you tell the audience a bit about that?
Sure. One of the things, and what Ryan's referring to is, when I started, even at 15 years old, I wasn't afraid to contact major comic book creators and ask them about what they did. And so Jack Kirby, who's no longer with us, but Jack and Stan Lee co-created most of what we know as the Marvel Universe. So Thor, Hulk, Fantastic Four, all these characters. And Steve Ditko was another gentleman who co-created Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. But so many of these characters were Stan and Jack. Well, when I was 15, I found out through a magazine article that Jack Kirby lived in a little town in California. And I reached out to him and called him and spoke to him for 3 hours. And it's that lack of fear, I think, is one of the best things you can have. Because the worst thing he could have done is said, you know, go away, kid, you're bothering me. And I would have just been, well, I'm sorry, I won't bother you anymore. But instead, he talked to a 15-year-old kid from Kentucky for 3 hours. And I did that many times. And then as I got a little older, I started sending my work to comic book publishing companies and going to conventions and asking if an editor would be willing to look at my work. And that's why I was drawing professionally at 17, because I was willing to put myself out there, because it means rejection. That's just, it comes with the territory. But you have to understand that if somebody is giving you constructive criticism, they're not rejecting you. And if you can take that for what that means, and then go back and work on what you understand that they said that makes sense to you. You don't, all of it won't make sense to you. Somebody will say, you draw hands funny. And it's like, I don't think I draw hands funny. But if you can go back and take, okay, I need to work on foreshortening, or have a better grasp of perspective or anatomy or my storytelling, that will make a huge difference. And it applies to everything we do. So comic books, visual effects, filmmaking, every single thing we do boils down to, I did this. What do you think? And then somebody tells you what they think. And then you go, okay, you know, these people don't like it. This person didn't understand it at all. But these 2 or 3 people thought it was the best thing in the world. And you take that and you build on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can relate to that story, because when I first migrated, when I tried to get my internship in college, I actually sneaked into the loading dock of a building and went upstairs and then knocked the door on Devil's Due Publishing in Chicago. Then the project manager, Marcel Dillon, and the editor, Mark Powers from Marvel, who was working for Marvel people, the first question they asked me, how can you get here? Because the building is locked. So I got a friend who's working downstairs, and he sneaked me in. So that's the kind of give me a chance to give them the portfolio. And then I, of course, still push them by calling and stuff. And then I think they had pity on me and then gave me the internship. Yeah. But it actually opened the door, and then I could draw Snake Eyes. Actually, I drew Snake Eyes too.
Oh, awesome! That's great.
Yeah,
that's wonderful, and I think that's the thing, is people just understanding that you know, to some degree, it is selling. And a lot of artists don't like to sell. They don't like to do business. They want to just create art. But ultimately, unless you've got somebody who's willing to, like you've got a brother who's willing to talk for you and tell them how great you are, you're going to have to go in there and convince them that you're worth taking a chance on. And that's, that really is such a big part of it. And when I say it's selling, I'm somebody who believes in the philosophy that selling is a numbers game. It's a statistic. So if you have, you know, if you sell 4 times out of 100, that means you have to get 96 no's. So every no that you get, you're statistically moving closer to success. And it's a different philosophical way to look at it.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Wow. Wow. Right. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one of the most inspiring sharing. Yeah.
I sincerely feel that way. I mean, it's how I move through life.
Ya, jadi teman-teman juga untuk yang muda-muda di sini juga, tadi yang basically yang sebenarnya adalah jangan takut untuk memperlihatkan diri gitu, ini karya gue, what do you think gitu ke semua orang gitu, reach out gitu. Dengan adanya event ini sebenarnya juga kita pengen membuka itu gitu. We want to make a chance here to make people semuanya bisa reach out.
Sure.
Kita pengen teman-teman di daerah di mana semua itu untuk bisa membuka diri gitu di sini. Ayo hubungi kita, kasih karyanya, show your art and everything,
sure.
And we will help you in any way we can.
Which is a wonderful advantage for these people to have somebody like you guys who are willing to do that.
Yeah. So hopefully this is a start of a series of collaboration and everything.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And, if whatever you need from me, if people want to reach out to me, they're welcome to reach out. I'll be glad to take a look at anything, give feedback, whether it's comic books or effects or film, whatever they'd like me to do.
Thank you so much. This means a lot for us. This is like our first baby steps here to really create a living creative industry here.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored to be a part of it with you.
Thank you so much. All right, Mbak Dewi, Mas Dedi, bagaimana? Chris, everything okay?
Yeah, I think I just want to summarize, maybe in Indonesian, bahwa sebenarnya tadi Kevin bilang bahwa salah satu kunci dia sukses sebagai artis ya, baik itu di komik maupun di film dan sekarang sebagai VFX supervisor, itu adalah harus curious ya, selalu curious, ingin tahu, kemudian observe, dan juga tentu saja harus punya passion terhadap bidang yang ditekuni. Jadi jangan mikirin, oh ya nih kalau gue kerjain ini gue dapet duit segini gitu, tapi lebih ke arah emang gue suka nih gitu. Nah kalau emang gue suka banget, pasti kan kita akan ada extra effort ya untuk belajar, untuk ingin tahu lebih lanjut, dan akhirnya kita nggak sadar tuh jadi ngerti dan jadi menguasai bidang itu. Dan ketika kita sudah di tahap itu, sebenarnya sih harusnya project datang sendiri ya gitu. Jadi kita nggak usah mikirin itu dulu, tapi kita jadi jago dulu sih. Karena kalau kita nggak jago, sekarang nih saingan dari seluruh dunia tuh, kita persaingan udah dari seluruh dunia, nggak persaingan antar temen aja udahan. Jadi kita harus lebih jago. Jadi yang paling jago nggak cuma di Indonesia, tapi kalau bisa paling jago di seluruh dunia gitu ya. Dan dengan tadi seperti observe dan lain-lain yang disebut oleh Kevin, itu menunjukkan bahwa di dunia VFX ini dan CGI ini tidak cuma technical, tapi juga ada artnya ya, sesuatu yang intangible yang harus kita pahami, kita berusaha rasakan, dan itu memang Kevin juga atau kita nggak bisa ngajarin, makanya Kevin usulin kita harus curious dan juga observe sendiri, masing-masing punya caranya sendiri untuk bisa mendapatkan skill skill itu gitu ya. Dan itu akan sangat berguna ketika diterapkan di technical. Karena misalnya di api, kita nggak ngerti nih, nggak pernah lihat api itu yang real tuh kayak apa, terus kita dalam pikiran kita, oh api itu kayak gini, kartun gitu, terus kita disuruh bikin api di CGI, terus udah nggak usah lihat api orang, kita bikin api sendiri gitu, ternyata nggak real gitu kan, jadi emang harus observe gitu. Itu contoh paling gampang lah ya, gitu kali ya, Ryan ya.
Betul sekali. Jadi the best artist adalah yang bisa benar-benar menyerap sebenarnya dunia itu apa yang dipersepsikan sama orang. Jadi kayak best artist adalah dia yang mungkin keluar alam kemana, ngelihat alam itu seperti apa gitu, instead of cuma sekadar mengurung diri di dalam kamar gitu. Jadi semakin kita banyak berinteraksi dengan orang gitu, dan dengan kita berinteraksi dengan alam, justru semakin banyak yang bisa kita tangkap untuk bisa menuangkan itu menjadi sebuah karya. Gitu. Apakah itu story, apakah itu comics, atau itu visual effects, atau novel or anything gitu kan. Go out there, reach out.
Some people are asking questions via chat. They're asking where they could show their artwork, and I didn't know if you had an official place to.
Oh yeah. We have a Facebook page. Mbak Dewi bisa dikasih linknya. We have a Facebook page that we're going to make the community and everything. It's called Digital Artists Society.
So I'm just responding to a few people as well. So
yeah,
yeah. So very, very nice. I'm glad that there's a place for them. There's quite a few people are wanting to show their work.
Yeah, definitely. Nanti di Facebook page itu nanti silakan daftar ke situ. Dari IG dan semuanya. Nah, terutama di Facebook page nanti silakan show your creation di situ gitu. Terus walaupun misalnya cuma work in progress, sketch or everything, upload it there. Nah, nanti di situ kita akan mungkin akan ngasih komentar juga. Saya, Chris, Kevin juga, nanti pembicara-pembicara selanjutnya juga. Di mana nanti ketika community itu semakin berkembang, akan semakin banyak juga yang akan ngasih masukan. Dan who knows, ini akan menjadi your life-changing moments to show your arts.
Yeah, no, it's you never know how much the power of a question. The power of an intelligently asked question.
Yes.
And good questions. And by that I mean, what can I do today that will help me get closer to my goal? Yeah. And that's that's a big one.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And,
yeah.
I'm going to have to bookmark a few of these. Some people are sending me ArtStation links. So I have to save the links here so I don't lose them when we disconnect. And I am recording this so I can send it to you. Hopefully it's still recording. It was longer than, I've never recorded anything on my screen this long. So
okay.
It should be okay. And it says you guys are recording too. So
yeah. Yes. All right. And so I think that concludes our workshop today.
Mas Ryan, Mas Chris, terima kasih sudah menjadi moderator Superclass pada hari ini. And also thank you for Kevin Van Hook to be here in Superclass and sharing your experience, knowledge, and I hope we can meet again in the other opportunity.
I look forward to it.
Yes. Okay. Dari Superclass hari ini bersama dengan Kevin Van Hook, semoga kita semua terinspirasi menjadi sosok yang hebat dan sosok yang terus berkarya sehingga menjadi hebat seperti Kevin Van Hook. Begitu. Well, teman-teman, thank you banget sudah bergabung di Superclass hari ini.